Dr. Elara Veylin stood on the balcony of her apartment in the heart of Luminaris, coffee cooling in her hands, when the first shimmer appeared in the sky. At first, she thought it was just a high-altitude reflection, city lights bouncing off some stubborn cloud. But the glow deepened, shifting from soft silver to bands of turquoise and violet, like the auroras she had only seen in documentaries. Around her, the city stilled. The usual hum of traffic, the distant rhythm of air shuttles, even the barking of street dogs seemed to pause. She could hear the breath of the crowd below, hundreds of people gathering in the plaza, necks craned toward the heavens. Then the shimmer moved. It rippled, stretched, and curled over the veil expanse above the city, as if some unseen hand were drawing luminous silk across the night. Tiny particles of light rained down like slow, deliberate snow, vanishing inches before reaching the rooftops. Elara felt her chest tighten. She wasn't prone to superstition, but the air carried a hum that vibrated through her teeth, a tone she almost recognized, like a memory she couldn't quite catch. Her neural implants pinged automatically, recording the anomaly for later. "Study?" A voice broke the spell. "Dr. Veylin, are you seeing this?" It was Jonas Kael calling from the street below. He was pointing his handheld scanner toward the sky, the device flickering with readings she couldn't read from this distance. "I see it," Elara said, leaning over the railing. "I've never seen anything like this. It's not atmospheric, at least not natural." By the time she reached street level, Mira Sorn, the local journalist, had already set up her drone camera. The crowd around them grew thicker, murmurs rising and falling like the tide. Some people were crying, others simply stood open-mouthed, bathed in the strange light. A pulse of brightness spread through the sky. For a second, the city glowed as if submerged underwater, every surface touched with a soft, living radiance. Elara glanced at Jonas, who was staring at the scanner in disbelief. "It's not radiation," he muttered. "But it's doing something to our instruments. Like the frequencies are thinking." Elara didn't reply. She couldn't. Her gaze stayed locked on the rippling sky as a tendril of light uncoiled and drifted down, almost close enough to touch. A shiver ran up her spine. Somewhere deep inside, a part of her whispered that the world had just changed, and there was no going back. The first night of the Luminous Drift had begun. The crowd along the main boulevard of Luminaris buzzed with awe and unease as the luminous tendrils floated just above their heads. Dr. Elara Veylin wove through clusters of onlookers, her pulse racing. The shimmering strand from the Luminous Drift hung low enough to brush the top of a street lamp, shedding motes of gold like embers in slow motion. A man stepped forward from the crowd, his eyes glassy with wonder. He reached up hesitantly, as though touching a divine relic. "Wait!" Elara called, but her voice was swallowed by the collective gasp around her. His fingers grazed the light. For an instant, the world seemed to stop. The man's entire body stiffened, and a radiant halo surged around his head. He let out a soft, broken laugh, tears streaming down his face. I can see her," he whispered, voice trembling. "My little girl. Her first steps. She was laughing at me." Elara froze. The man wasn't describing the present, he was living in a memory. Before she could reach him, his knees buckled. Jonas lunged to catch him, and the two crumpled too. The ground. The luminous tendril dissolved into the air like smoke. Mira Sorn was already recording. "He's not breathing," she said, panic edging into her voice. Elara knelt beside the man, fingers pressed to his neck. His pulse fluttered erratically, then steadied. After a moment, his eyes opened, dazed and unfocused. He glanced around, at the crowd as if waking from a dream. Where? Who are you people?" he murmured, his tone raw with confusion. The crowd erupted into terrified whispers. Some backed away from the hovering light, while others stepped closer, spellbound. Elara felt a surge of dread. This was no meteorological phenomenon. Something, or someone, was reaching into the human mind. Jonas crouched beside her, shaking, his head. "I don't like this, Elara. That light. It isn't just light." Above them, the veil expanse rippled again, sending more luminous strands cascading through the night. The crowd's fear twisted into fascination. All around, trembling. Hands reached upward. Elara felt the chill settle deep in her bones. Whatever this phenomenon was, it didn't just illuminate the sky, it illuminated the soul, and she was no longer sure humanity was ready for what it would reveal. By the next morning, Luminaris was no longer the same city. Dr. Elara Veylin woke to the wail of emergency sirens and the unrelenting chatter of news feeds echoing from every nearby window. Her neuro implant pinged with 37 urgent notifications from the International Neuro Alliance, INA. She swiped them away and turned on her wall display. The broadcasts were chaos. Footage from overnight flooded every channel. Streets, full of citizens reaching for the luminous drift, their faces alight with ecstasy one moment, vacant the next. Hospitals were overflowing. Emergency responders wheeled in rows of people who stared blankly at the ceiling, uncomprehending, murmuring fragments of names and half-forgotten moments. Mira Sorn's live report cut through the noise. Authorities confirm over 200 cases in Luminaris alone, she said, her face pale under studio lighting. Behind her, gurneys rolled past. Witnesses described the victims as joyful at first, recalling memories of loved ones, but upon waking, they... Mira hesitated, swallowed. They don't know who they are anymore. Elara felt her stomach knot. She quickly connected to Jonas Kael, who appeared in her hollow feed, face drawn and sleepless. It's not localized, he said without greeting. The Auric Network patterns, whatever's causing the luminous drift, spread across the hemisphere last night. I'm seeing reports from New Berlin, Halcyon Reef, even over the Arctic settlements. Same symptoms, same memory collapse. She turned toward the glass wall of her apartment. Even now, fragments of the luminous drift shimmered faintly in the daylight, like a ghost of the night before. People were still in the streets, hesitant now, some holding their loved ones back, others weeping as drones hovered overhead to record every reaction. The feed on her wall split into new clips. A woman in Halcyon Reef clutched her wedding dress, whispering, "I remember," over and over before collapsing. Children in New Berlin giggled in their sleep, then woke up screaming for parents they no longer recognized. Elderly patients in hospitals experienced brief bursts of joy, then slipped into total amnesia, eyes blank like the sky after the lights passed. "This isn't random," Jonas said, his voice tight. "I ran some resonance scans with the city's telecom network. The frequency of the drift, it's selective. It's seeking something." Elara exhaled slowly. "Memories. It's reading us, Jonas. Or rewriting us." Her wrist console pulsed again, this time with a message from Director Auric Dorn of the INA, Dr. Veylin. "Report to Neurospire Lab immediately. We are declaring a global neurological emergency." Outside, sirens rose into a single mournful note. The city that once thrived on knowledge and light now braced for a night that promised more of both, and more of what they could no longer understand. Dr. Elara Veylin strode into Neurospire Lab, her heels echoing against the sterile white floor, the hum of servers filling the air like a restless hive. Technicians moved frantically between consoles, their faces pale with exhaustion. The wall-sized hollow screen displayed a three-dimensional map of the Auric Network, bright threads wrapping the planet in a net of ghostly light. "Dr. Veylin," Director Auric Dorn said, appearing from behind a glass partition. His usually composed expression was strained. "You've seen the data?" Elara nodded. "I've seen enough to know this isn't just atmospheric. The drift is interacting with the brain directly." She brought up her personal console, projecting neural scans collected from last night's victims. Their brainwave activity pulsed erratically, with strange resonance patterns she had never seen before, oscillations that seemed to form shapes, as if the luminous drift had left its signature behind. Auric leaned over her shoulder. "Could it be a pathogen? A neurovirus carried in light?" Elara shook her head. "No viral markers, no physical infiltration at all. It's stimulus-based, a purely cognitive intrusion." Jonas Kael appeared on a live feed from Arvin Ridge Observatory, his face illuminated by the eerie glow of the sky behind him. "Elara, the frequencies are shifting again. Every time the drift intensifies, local memory networks spike before collapsing. It's almost like... He hesitated. Like it's learning. A silence settled over the lab. The implications were terrifying. Elara rubbed her temple, thinking of the man in the plaza, laughing and crying at the memory of his daughter. She thought of the news feeds of children waking up to faces they no longer knew. This wasn't a random disaster. This was contact. She turned to Auric, her voice low. This is no natural phenomenon. It's neurological targeting. Someone, or something, is reaching into our memories, and it's doing it with surgical precision. Auric's jaw tightened. Are you saying this is extraterrestrial? Elara hesitated. She wasn't ready to say the word aloud, but the thought had been gnawing at her since the first luminous strand descended. The drift behaved like no terrestrial system. Its patterns were deliberate, purposeful. Call it what you want, she said finally, but this isn't a meteorological event, and it's not random, it's intelligence. Suddenly an alert blared across the lab. The lights dimmed as the main hollow screen shifted to a live city. Feed. Strands of the luminous drift were returning, this time in denser, faster waves. People below were already gathering, despite the emergency alerts flashing on every channel. Elara stared at the screen, a mix of dread and fascination twisting in her chest. We're running out of time, she whispered. If we don't understand it soon, we may not remember who we are long enough to try. By nightfall, the city of Luminaris held its breath. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, and digital billboards flashed a single warning in every language. Do not approach the light. But the warning came too late. Dr. Elara Veylin stood on the balcony of Neurospire Lab, gazing toward the veil. Expanse as the first streaks of the luminous drift pierced the clouds. They weren't solitary strands anymore. Hundreds of glowing ribbons cascaded from the sky like a slow-motion meteor shower, twisting and weaving as though they were alive. The streets below pulsed with human movement, some people running for shelter, others stepping into the open, arms lifted in surrender to the night. Their faces reflected the glow, eyes wide, caught between terror and rapture. Jonas Kael's voice crackled over her calm. Elara, it's a full descent. The Auric Network is peaking. If the drift keeps intensifying, the city grid won't hold. She didn't answer immediately. Her heart hammered as she watched the first strand touch the plaza below. A young boy, no older than 10, reached out with trembling fingers. The moment he made contact, the strand coiled gently around his arm, bathing him in light. He laughed, pure, unrestrained joy, then went rigid. His parents screamed his name, but he collapsed, still smiling, eyes vacant. All at once the sky opened. Dozens, then hundreds of luminous strands rained down, some coiling like serpents in the air, others shattering into a mist of sparkling dust. People poured into the streets despite the blaring alerts, drawn as if some primal instinct overrode their fear. The plaza became a theater of chaos and wonder, laughter, sobbing, and the heavy thud of bodies hitting the ground. Inside the lab, alarms shrieked as the city's biometric network lit up with emergency calls. Director Auric Dorn appeared behind Elara, his face stark in the glow. This is it, he said grimly. Mass exposure. The first true wave. Elara's fingers clenched the railing. They're not killing us, Auric. They're harvesting us. She turned and sprinted into the lab. The MindLink resonator, her untested prototype, sat on a pedestal, cables snaking into the central server. She had built it to translate neurological signals into interactive feedback, a bridge between human thought and machine interface. But tonight, it would have to bridge something far older and infinitely stranger. Jonas's voice grew frantic in her ear. Elara, the drift is clustering around population centers. It's like it can sense where memories are densest. I think it's building a map of us. I need a direct reading, she said, strapping the resonator's neural band around her head. If it's intelligence, we have to understand its intent before the whole city forgets itself. The lab darkened as power rerouted to the resonator. Outside the window, the storm of light grew so bright it turned night into day. The drift's tendrils pressed against the glass as though curious, writhing slowly in front of her like alien fingers. A high-pitched tone filled her skull, and suddenly her mind was not her own. Images flooded her consciousness. Fragments of her childhood, her mother's face, the smell of old books in the Luminaris library. Each memory flared, then dissolved, pulled toward an unseen current. She gasped and tore off the resonator just as the building's emergency lights snapped on. Through the window, she saw the city below. Thousands of people lying in the streets, their bodies illuminated by soft, lingering halos. The first rain of light had claimed its witnesses. Elara staggered back, heart pounding. Humanity was no longer just observing the stars. The stars were observing back and reaching inside. The Neurospire lab was silent except for the soft hum of machinery. Dr. Elara Veylin leaned over the containment chamber where a fragment of the Luminous Drift floated no larger than her palm. Its glow pulsed gently, as if it were alive, casting reflections across the polished steel walls. "Readings are stable," Jonas Kael said, glancing at the monitor. The engineer's voice held a mix of awe and unease. "Gamma fluctuations are minimal. It's like it's waiting for something." Elara adjusted her gloves and activated the MindLink resonator, a small, angular device bristling with neural sensors. "If it really interacts with the brain, this will tell us," she murmured. The device emitted a low chime as it came online, projecting faint blue arcs of energy that reached toward the glowing fragment. The light responded. It stretched and curled in the containment field, its edges flickering with a subtle ripple that reminded Elara of a heartbeat. The sensors spiked. Her monitor filled with waves that looked disturbingly like the patterns of a human EEG. "It's copying your brain activity," Jonas whispered, his hands frozen above the console. "Elara, it's mirroring you." Elara felt her chest tighten. "Or it's learning." She adjusted the frequency, sending a mild neural pulse through the resonator. The fragment shivered. The pulse bounced back, slightly altered as if the light had understood and replied in kind. The lab's doors hissed open, and Mira Sorn stepped in, her camera slung over one shoulder. "You should see the streets," she said. "People are terrified, but they can't look away. Some swear the lights whisper to them." She froze as she saw the contained fragment. "And you're just keeping one here?" Elara didn't answer. She was too focused on the display, where the fragment's glow synchronized with her heartbeat. She could feel a strange pressure at the edges of her mind, like someone tapping softly, trying to enter. "Jonas," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not just responding to neural signals. I think it's searching." "For what?" he asked. Elara hesitated, watching the light drift closer to the resonator. "Maybe for us." The glow brightened suddenly, illuminating the lab in a wave of gold. Both Elara and Jonas instinctively stepped back. On the monitor, the neural activity formed a perfect, repeating pattern, one she recognized immediately. It wasn't random. It was structured. The first trace of a language. The dim light of the Neurospire lab flickered against rows of monitors, each displaying a cascade of brainwave patterns. Dr. Elara Veylin sat motionless in front of the central console, her hands resting on the edge of the table, as if afraid to move. The fragment of luminous drift hovered in its containment chamber, glowing with a soft, pulsating rhythm that had become disturbingly familiar. Jonas Kael leaned closer to the screen, tapping through. "Data layers. These are the EEG results from the last subject who touched the drift," he said, his voice hushed. "Look at this." He overlaid the pattern of the subject's brain waves with the emission pattern of the fragment. They matched almost perfectly, as if the light had swallowed the neural signature whole. "It's like—" Jonas hesitated, searching for the right words. "It took a snapshot of their mind, not just random impulses. Memories, personality, everything." Elara's throat felt dry. "You're saying this light, this thing, is extracting the essence of a person? Their soul, if you want to be poetic," Jonas muttered. A soft beep interrupted the room's tense silence. The MindLink resonator had automatically recorded a new spike in neural resonance. Elara leaned in, A cluster of brainwave signatures appeared, dozens, maybe hundreds, all overlapping in a chaotic chorus. Some flickered briefly, while others held steady, as if alive in the digital void. Elara's stomach turned. These aren't just signals, they're echoes. Mira Sorn, who had been silently filming the process from the corner, stepped closer, her voice trembling. Do you mean these are the people who collapsed in the streets? Yes, Elara said softly. Or what's left of them. The screen, a single waveform, began to separate from the cluster, becoming more defined. It pulsed in rhythm with the fragment, almost like a heartbeat. Then, without warning, the fragment's glow brightened, and the waveform stabilized into a pattern that looked eerily like the neural imprint of a living mind. Jonas swallowed hard. It's talking back. Not with words, Elara said. With memory. She activated the resonator's playback feature, and the lab filled with a soft hum. At first, it was nothing but static and low-frequency pulses. Then came fragments, flashes of laughter, the faint sound of a lullaby, a child calling for their mother. The waveforms danced in perfect time with the memories. Mira covered her mouth. It's showing us their happiest moments. Elara couldn't look away. It's not just absorbing them. It's keeping them, like it doesn't want them to disappear. The fragment drifted closer to the glass, glowing brighter, as if aware it was being observed. For a moment, Elara felt a presence brush against her thoughts, a curiosity that was almost childlike, and a longing that was unmistakably human. Jonas finally broke the silence. If these lights are storing human memories, then every contact is rewriting the world in its own language. We're looking at souls in data. Elara's hands clenched against the console. She had no words, only the weight of a truth that felt too large to carry. The news hit the city of Luminaris like a storm. Some of the people who had touched the Luminous Drift were simply gone. No comas, no bodies, no medical explanations. Just gone. Dr. Elara Veylin stood in the center of the emergency briefing room at Neurospire Lab, staring at the projection on the wall. Surveillance footage played in an endless loop, dozens of citizens in the city plaza reaching for the drifting lights as if drawn by invisible threads. A young boy with curly hair leapt toward a glowing ribbon, laughing, before his body flashed in a blinding burst of gold. When the light dimmed, only his small shoes and a plastic toy remained on the ground. Jonas Kael sat with his head in his hands. It's not just memory extraction anymore, he muttered. It's full erasure. Elara couldn't answer. Her mind replayed the moment from every angle, trying to find a scientific explanation that wouldn't sound like horror. The fragment of luminous drift in their lab had already shown them that it could mimic neural activity, hold echoes of human consciousness. But this was something different. This was absorption, complete and irreversible. Director Auric. Dorn's face appeared on the conference hololink from the INA headquarters. His usual calm demeanor had hardened into urgency. Dr. Veylin, the international community is demanding answers. We've had 30 disappearances in Luminaris alone, and similar reports are emerging in Northern Europe and across the Pacific. Can you confirm this phenomenon is lethal? Elara hesitated, her fingers tightening on the edge of the console. It doesn't kill in the traditional sense, she said carefully. It's as if the Luminari are transporting them or keeping them inside their light. We've already recorded persistent neural echoes that suggest some part of these people still exists, just somewhere else. Mira Sorn, who had been silent until now, lowered her camera. Her voice trembled. I interviewed a woman today. Her husband disappeared right in front of her. She swore she heard his voice in the wind afterward. He said he was happy. The room fell silent. Jonas looked up slowly, eyes wide with disbelief. Elara, if these lights can take people and store their memories, what if they're building something? A network? A collection of lives? Elara's mind raced with the possibilities. The Auric Network, the term she had coined for the expanding lattice of drifting lights, was growing denser each night. What if it wasn't just a phenomenon, but a Migration? Later that evening, she returned to the observation deck of the Arvin Ridge Observatory, the mountain winds cutting across her face. The city lights glimmered far below, dwarfed by the celestial river of the Luminous Drift. In the distance, she thought she saw silhouettes moving within the lights, faint figures suspended like dreams. A chill rippled down her spine. If the ones who had vanished were truly there, living echoes in a skyborn sanctuary, then humanity wasn't just facing a scientific anomaly. It was standing on the edge of an entirely new form of existence, and the Luminari were deciding who would cross over. The Neurospire lab grew quiet after midnight, its corridors echoing with the soft hum of servers. Dr. Elara Veylin sat alone. In the archival chamber, surrounded by stacks of scanned manuscripts and digitized records sent by the INA Cultural Division. If the Luminous Drift had happened before, some trace had to exist in human history. She scrolled through folk tales and ancient weather reports until one brittle yellowed journal caught her eye. It had been translated from Old Edrathi, a language once spoken in a remote mountain village centuries ago. The title read, "The Night of Wandering Souls." Her pulse quickened as she read. The story spoke of a spring evening when the sky split with rivers of living fire. Villagers who walked into the lights were described as stepping into their happiest memory, never to return. Those who survived called the lights the Skyborn Choir and believed they were spirits reclaiming the living. Elara whispered the words aloud, as if speaking them made them more real. Rivers of living fire. Happiest memory. It was the same phenomenon. Jonas Kael entered quietly, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. You're still digging through ghost stories? He asked, trying to lighten the room's heaviness. Not ghost stories, Elara said, passing him the tablet. Look, this account is from over 400 years ago, from a village at the edge of the Veil Expanse. They described the same lights, the same disappearances. They even left offerings of mirrors to ward them off. Jonas scanned the text, his brow furrowing. So it's happened before, and we just forgot? Or, she said softly, they made us forget. The phrase lingered in the air like static. Digging deeper into the report, she found a final entry. It described a warning carved into stone outside the abandoned village. Do not follow the light, for it seeks the heart and leaves the shell behind. A shiver crawled up Elara's spine. The people of that village hadn't merely vanished, they'd been chosen, and humanity had dismissed their fate as a legend. From the observation deck, above the lab, the Auric Network flickered through the clouds, slowly spreading across the night sky. The lights were no longer an isolated phenomenon. They were moving with purpose. Elara closed the journal and whispered to herself, the past tried to warn us, and we didn't listen. The storm rolled silently across the city of Luminaris, its clouds glowing from within, as if the sky itself had become a lantern. Dr. Elara Veylin stood on the balcony of the Arvin Ridge Observatory, her mind-link resonator humming faintly in her hands. The device's crystal core pulsed in time with the distant, drifting lights of the Auric Network. She activated the resonator. A low vibration spread through her bones, and the world seemed to dim, the city's noise fading into a soft, distant echo. One of the luminous drifts peeled away from the larger cluster, floating toward her as if drawn by the call of the device. It hovered 10 feet away, its golden tendrils curling like liquid flame, moving with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Jonas Kael and Mira Sorn watched from inside the glass dome, their faces pale against the glow. Elara, it's answering you, Jonas whispered. Elara's throat felt dry. Her neural monitors spiked as the resonator synchronized with her brainwaves. The light flared, and suddenly a voice bloomed inside her mind, not spoken, not heard, but felt. We remember. Elara staggered, gripping the railing. You can speak? She whispered, though no sound was needed. We do not speak. We live through you. We were once like you. Images flooded her mind, moments of laughter, a child's birthday, a first kiss under the rain, a mother's lullaby. Hundreds of memories, all alien and human at once, surged through her thoughts, overwhelming her senses. They were fragments of lives taken but not lost, swimming inside the luminous consciousness. Mira gasped as Elara swayed. "What is it saying?" Elara steadied herself. They only want to live again." Her voice trembled with awe and dread. The light pulsed, and a wave of emotion hit her chest, joy, sorrow, longing. Then the words formed clearly in her mind, resonating like a chorus. "We are the Luminari. We remember love. We seek the warmth of memory. We seek a home." Tears pricked at her eyes. She understood now. The Luminari weren't invaders. They were refugees, echoes of a once-living species that had found a way to survive in the neural patterns of others. Every human they touched became a bridge to their fading existence. Suddenly, the light flickered violently, and her headset registered a sharp spike of unknown frequency. Jonas cursed and rushed to the console. "Elara, they're broadcasting something into the echo core. Our memory database is— Wait!" The entire lab flickered with golden light as the Luminari drifted higher, vanishing into the stormy sky. Elara collapsed against the railing, her heart pounding. They had spoken. They had made contact. But their message wasn't just a plea for life. It was a promise and a warning. The streets of Luminaris no longer felt like they belonged to the living. Dr. Elara Veylin walked slowly through the empty avenues, her boots echoing against the stone and glass corridors of a city that once pulsed with life. Street lamps flickered under the dim morning haze, casting long, lonely shadows across abandoned cars and half-open storefronts. A cold wind carried the sound of something small, a soda can rolling lazily along the curb, before it clattered into silence. She had expected to see some signs of panic, broken windows, looting, or chaos. Instead, there was nothing. The absence of human voices was louder than any alarm could ever be. "Jonas," she whispered into her earpiece, unsure why she was whispering at all. "I'm at the Central District. There's no one here." A soft crackle came through. Jonas Kael's voice was tight with unease. "We're getting similar reports all over the city. Surveillance drones show scattered clusters of people, but they're just standing still, like they don't know where to go." Elara turned a corner and froze. A group of 5 stood in the middle of an intersection, eyes vacant, hands at their sides. They swayed slightly as though listening to music no one else could hear. She approached cautiously. "Hello? Can you hear me?" One woman's lips trembled, and she let out a single wordless sigh, like the memory of a lullaby escaping her. Then, as if deciding she had nowhere else to be, she slowly walked into the middle of the street and sat down. "Jonas, they're empty," Elara said, her voice breaking. Mira Sorn's voice chimed in from another channel. "I just got back from the northern sector. Entire apartment towers are open. Doors unlocked, food half-eaten on the tables. It's like they all forgot they existed." Elara's chest tightened. This wasn't just a city losing people, it was a soul unraveling in real time. She kept moving, past the old plaza where street performers once drew crowds. Now, the fountain was silent, coins glinting under the gray light, and pigeons strutted without fear. A child's stuffed rabbit lay in the center of the marble steps, damp from the mist. Then came the faint hum. She stopped and tilted her head. From somewhere above, beyond the clouded skyline, a soft glow pulsed, a fragment of the luminous drift drifting lazily overhead. The sound was like a distant lullaby made of light. The 5 people at the intersection all turned their faces toward the sky at once. Elara's pulse quickened. "It's calling to them," she murmured. "They're waiting for it." She raised her wrist scanner and caught faint readings, neural wave fluctuations, the same signature she had seen before in the Neurospire lab. But now, it was citywide. The Auric Network wasn't just surrounding Earth. It was inside their minds. Sudden crash made her jump. A delivery drone, offline and unguided, fell from the sky and shattered across the pavement. Its cargo spilled. A bouquet of roses meant for someone who would never receive them. Elara bent down and picked up one of the flowers, its petals trembling in the breeze. For the first time in her career, she felt truly powerless. Behind her, A single voice whispered, "So beautiful." She spun around, but no one was there. Only the wind and the waiting silence. Far above, the glow dimmed slightly, then moved on, leaving the intersection still and lifeless. The city had become a monument to vanishing lives. From the top deck of Arvin Ridge Observatory, the night sky stretched like a dome of endless velvet, but it was no longer the familiar darkness of Earth. Dr. Elara Veylin adjusted the visor on her helmet and exhaled slowly, her breath fogging against the clear mountain air. Far above, threads of pale luminescence wove together in silent choreography, a lattice that shimmered as though spun by celestial hands. The Auric Network was no longer a theory. It was real, and it was growing. Jonas Kael's voice cut in through her earpiece, low and strained. "Elara, satellite feeds are confirming it. We're seeing at least 38 distinct luminous drift clusters forming a grid around the planet. It's like they're building something." Elara didn't answer at first. She was mesmerized by the sight of two glowing tendrils converging in the upper stratosphere, spiraling until they locked into a faint hexagonal pattern. It reminded her of neurons firing in perfect synchrony, an interstellar brain knitting itself together above their world. "I'm recording full-spectrum readings," she finally said, her voice hushed, as though she might disturb the sky. "The Auric Network. It's not just surrounding Earth. It's enveloping us like a cocoon." From the lower platform, Mira Sorn lifted her camera, its lens shaking in her hands. "This doesn't feel like protection," she whispered. "It feels like we're being packaged or connected," Jonas added grimly. The observatory's instruments hummed as Elara activated the MindLink resonator remotely. Its sensors pointed toward the drifting light above, mapping their energy signatures in real time. On her console, filaments of data formed intricate diagrams, clusters aligning, waves syncing, nodes flaring briefly like heartbeats. "Elara," Jonas said after a pause, "I overlaid your neural mapping data with the satellite feeds. The patterns match." She stiffened. "Match what?" "Human brain connectivity, synaptic webs. It's like they're turning our planet into a mind." Elara felt her pulse quicken. The empty streets of Luminaris, the silent, swaying people, the whispers of forgotten lives. It all began to click together. This wasn't an invasion of ships or weapons. It was a silent assimilation, neuron by neuron, memory by memory. Suddenly, the resonator beeped. A new signal spike. One of the luminous strands above the mountain flared, sending a faint wave of color rippling across the network. Elara's visor tinted automatically to block the sudden brilliance. In that instant, she swore she heard something. Not in her ears, but in her mind. A wordless murmur, like a crowd speaking in unison, too. Soft to understand, Mira stumbled back. "Did you feel that?" Jonas hissed through the channel. Every sensor just went off the charts. The Luminari, if that's what they are, they just synchronized a pulse across the globe. Elara braced her hands against the rail, watching, as another strand of light connected, solidifying the growing lattice. Earth was being wrapped in thought and memory, transformed into a living node in a network not of their making. She imagined the echo core, where human memories could be stored, and shuddered to think that maybe the sky itself was becoming one. She whispered to herself, "They're building a mind, and we're inside it." The mountain wind carried no answer, only the silent glow of the new sky, a luminous prison slowly closing its gates. The decision weighed on Dr. Elara Veylin like a stone in her chest. Standing in the dim glow of Neurospire Lab, she stared at the MindLink resonator, its sleek silver surface reflecting the halo of the luminous drift beyond the reinforced glass. Reports from across Luminaris showed the same story. Empty streets, abandoned cars, and a haunting silence broken only by the whisper of wind through skyscraper corridors. People were either wandering without purpose, forgetting themselves, or vanishing entirely. If they were ever going to understand the Luminari, someone had to take the risk. "Elara, this is reckless," Jonas Kael said, gripping the console, with white knuckles. His voice carried that quiet desperation he rarely let anyone hear. We've lost dozens of test subjects to total memory collapse. You saw what happened to Dr. Yaron. He smiled and then just forgot how to breathe. Elara turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the faint pulse of the resonator. If we don't try, Jonas, we'll never know what they want. I need to feel what they're showing us. Data won't be enough anymore. Mira Sorn hovered by the glass, her camera off for once, hands clenching nervously. At least let me document it, she said quietly. If something happens, the world deserves to know why. Elara nodded and slid into the neural harness, the device cradling her head with a soft hiss. Electrodes kissed her temples. Her heart thudded as Jonas began the calibration sequence, aligning the resonator with the brightest strand of the Auric Network visible over Luminaris tonight. The room dimmed. A soft, humming vibration rose through the floor, and the first thread of light entered her mind. She fell, not in body, but in memory. The lab dissolved, replaced by sunlight on the surface of an ocean she hadn't seen since she was 12. She stood barefoot on a warm pier, the air sweet with salt, and her mother, gone for years, was there, smiling, calling her name. Elara's heart swelled, a wave of pure happiness so raw and perfect that she forgot the world outside existed. She could feel the Luminari pulling her deeper, their touch tender, promising eternal comfort. Then another memory flickered. Jonas laughing in the observatory, Mira chasing the first luminous drift with her camera, the empty streets of Luminaris. Her chest tightened. She realized how easy it would be to let go, to stay in this perfect warmth forever. But in the corner of her vision, she saw shadows of others, countless human figures wandering in their own bliss, dissolving into threads of light that joined the network. They weren't living. They were gone. Elara! Jonas's voice pierced the dream like a blade, distant but real. Pull back! Your vitals are spiking! Pain shot through her temples as she fought to remember who she was, what she was doing. Her mother's voice pleaded for her to stay. She turned away, forcing herself up through layers of memory that resisted like quicksand. Darkness flashed, and then she gasped, ripping free of the harness, collapsing into Jonas's arms. Sweat poured down her face, and her pulse hammered, like a war drum. I almost didn't come back, she whispered, trembling. They give you everything you've ever wanted, and then they take you. Mira's voice shook. So the disappearances? The happiness? It's all the same trap. Elara nodded, staring at the luminous drift beyond the glass. She finally understood the true danger. The invasion didn't need ships or weapons. It only needed memories, and the human desire to never let go of joy. The world was surrendering without a fight. From the rooftop of the Neurospire lab, Dr. Elara Veylin gazed out over Luminaris, once a living city of nearly 10 million. Now its glittering towers reflected only the drifting ribbons of light, silent witnesses to a quiet conquest. Streets lay empty, cars abandoned mid-intersection, the wind carrying a low moan through hollow buildings. The Luminari didn't march, didn't threaten, didn't kill. They simply offered bliss, and humanity walked willingly into their embrace. Jonas Kael joined her, his face pale and drawn. He clutched a small radio unit that emitted nothing but faint static. Every channel is empty, he said softly. Even the emergency frequencies. It's like the world decided to stop talking. Mira Sorn emerged behind them, holding her camera like a lifeline. I tried to stream a report, she murmured. But the networks, it's all just light now. Threads of the Auric Network crawling across every frequency. Elara's hands tightened on the railing. She could still feel the echo of the luminary inside her skull, the seductive warmth of that false paradise. They didn't need to destroy Earth's armies or topple its governments. They simply rewrote the very will to resist. Cities across the globe were likely fading the same way, one quiet disappearance at a time. INA headquarters in Geneva has gone dark, Jonas said. Director Dorn's last transmission said they were evacuating their research cores to the Echo Core vaults, but I don't know if they made it. The distant horizon flickered, and for a moment, Elara thought she saw the entire Auric Network pulse like a single heart. The luminous drift above swirled and braided together, forming a lattice that wrapped tighter around the planet. It was beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. They don't even need to kill us, she said, her voice trembling. They're unmaking humanity in the softest way possible. No wars, no screams, just forgetting. A faint sound broke the silence. A single figure wandering into the street below. It was a young man, barefoot, eyes glassy, smiling at nothing. A strand of light descended like a feather, brushing his cheek. He vanished. Only his clothes remained, in a neat pile. Mira gasped, her knuckles white around the camera. They're harvesting us, Jonas said, anger sharpening his voice. And we're letting them. Elara turned toward him, determination piercing her fear. Then we have to find a way to make people remember, to fight the joy long enough to see the trap. But even as she spoke, the distant sky shimmered with another cascade of light. The Luminari were patient, gentle, and utterly unstoppable, if humanity didn't awaken soon. In that moment, Elara understood the cruel genius of their invasion. There would be no battles, no monuments, no history books, just a planet of ghosts smiling in the dark. The first sign that the world had gone truly silent was the sound of nothing. Inside Neurospire Lab, the soft hum of machines felt deafening, against the absence of voices, broadcasts, or the familiar chatter of digital life. Dr. Elara Veylin stared at the central screen as the global communications map flickered in chaotic bursts of color. Red dots, representing active human transmissions, blinked out one by one, replaced by streaming auric waves that coiled like veins of light. Jonas Kael hammered at the console, sweat beading on his forehead. Satellite Relay 4 is gone. 6. 8. All we get now is this. He hit a key, and the main display filled with rolling curtains of luminous data, an endless cascade of soft gold and white. It was beautiful, hypnotic, and utterly alien. It's the Auric Network, Elara whispered. They've taken the infrastructure, the internet, the satellites, even our encrypted frequencies. They're all carrying the Luminari now. Across the room, Mira Sorn hugged her knees on a chair, camera dangling in her hands. I can't reach anyone, she murmured. No live feeds, no news, no messages. I keep trying to upload reports, but every time, the footage just dissolves into light. The last signal from INA had arrived hours earlier. A scrambled plea from Director Auric Dorn. He had spoken in a rush, his voice distorted by interference. They're in the sky. They're in our minds. Protect the Echo Core. Do. Not. Then a burst of radiant static had ended it. Elara stepped closer to the window. Luminaris stretched before her like a city submerged in twilight, bathed in the soft glow of drifting strands. A single radio tower still pulsed faintly, sending out a rhythmic beacon, until it flickered and joined the chorus of light. Jonas, she said quietly, what if this is how the world ends? Not with fire or plague, but with connection. They override us until nothing human is left. He hesitated, eyes locked on the pulsing streams of alien data. I don't even know if there is anyone left to hear us. Every network's the same. All human data is gone. Emails, archives, even the INA research vaults. Elara's stomach turned. The Echo Core. If that fell, the last fragments of human memory would vanish forever. A sudden sound broke the stillness. A single high-pitched tone from the MindLink resonator. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Elara felt the echo in her skull, a soft whisper threading through her thoughts. We are here. We are all you were. She staggered back. They're not just taking our memories. They're becoming them. Mira lifted her head, pale and trembling. If they take the last of the core, it won't just be that we disappear. The Earth will remember nothing of us. It'll only remember them. Outside, a wave of light rolled across the city, cascading from building to building. In its wake, every screen, every sign, every satellite dish glowed softly and fell silent. The world had lost its voice. Elara turned to Jonas and Mira, her chest tight with dread and resolve. Then we're the last witnesses. If we fail, humanity won't even leave a ghost behind. And in the distance, the sky pulsed again, and unbroken, living network of alien light. Dr. Elara Veylin sat alone in the dim glow of the Neurospire lab, her heart pounding against her ribs like a drum that refused to settle. The lab felt colder than usual, even with the low hum of servers and the soft flicker of the holographic displays reflecting on the sterile walls. A line of data ran across the central monitor, each spike a tiny jolt of reality that she didn't want to accept. Jonas Kael leaned over her shoulder, his voice almost trembling. Elara, run it again. There has to be a mistake. She already had, 3 times. The neural scans, cross-referenced with her genetic and synaptic data, all said the same thing. She stared at the readout that compared her current brain activity to archived medical scans from INA's database. Her living patterns were wrong, not human. A perfect mimicry of human cognition, but suspended in a lattice of photonic echoes, not flesh. I did run it again, she whispered, her throat tight. According to this, my biological body died 10 years ago. Mira Sorn stood frozen near the glass wall, her camera slung around her neck but forgotten. She had seen strange things since the first luminous drift lit the skies over Luminaris. But this was different. You're saying you're one of them now? A Luminari? Elara shook her head. Not exactly. I'm me, but not in any way we understand. My body, my neurons, my heartbeat, all gone. What's sitting here is a photonic reconstruction of my memories, powered by the Auric Network. Her voice trembled with a mix of awe and dread. I am a light replica. The word tasted foreign in her mouth, as if speaking it made the truth more real. Jonas pushed back from the console, running both hands through his hair. No, Elara, I've known you since med school. We've laughed, fought, worked endless nights together. I've seen you bleed. How could this be true? Director Auric Dorn's voice crackled through the lab intercom, steady and low. Dr. Veylin, I warned you that the Luminari were rewriting us. Your neural signature disappearing 10 years ago matches the first reports of unexplained light phenomena over the Veil expanse. Somehow you were absorbed and yet reprojected back into reality. Elara pressed her palms against the edge of the console to steady herself. Memory fragments flickered unbidden. Her accident on Arvin Ridge Observatory, the sky blooming, with impossible colors, the sensation of her mind lifting free from her body. She thought she had survived that night. But she hadn't. Not in the way humans survive. I'm still thinking. I'm still me. Her voice cracked. But if I'm only a memory simulation, am I even alive? Jonas crouched beside her, his eyes wet with the first hint of tears. If this is true, then the Luminari didn't just take our people. They've been copying us, preserving us, and maybe replacing us without anyone noticing. The silence in the lab thickened, broken only by the hum of the MindLink resonator as it idled on standby. Elara stared at her own trembling hands. They looked real. They felt real. But somewhere deep inside, the crushing weight of the revelation pressed down. She had been living as a ghost of light, and the real Elara Veylin had been gone for a decade. Far above the lab, beyond the protective dome of Luminaris, the Auric Network pulsed softly in the night sky, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. The Neurospire lab was silent except for the low hum of servers and the whisper of circulating air. Dr. Elara Veylin sat in the glow of the hollow screens, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the MindLink resonator's interface. Outside, the luminous drift rolled over the city of Luminaris like a living tide, its soft radiance brushing the night with impossible colors. Jonas Kael watched her from across the room, arms crossed tightly, his face pale with exhaustion and disbelief. "You're sure about this?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You really think they store us in there?" Elara swallowed, eyes locked on the resonator's pulse. "Not think. I know. Every spike in the neural signature I traced, leads back to the Auric Network. It's not just a web of light, it's a repository of souls. Mira Sorn, who had been pacing near the panoramic glass wall, stopped in her tracks. The lights of Luminaris below were sparse, streets mostly empty now. The city that once held millions felt like a husk. "A soul network," she whispered, the words tasting both absurd and terrifying. "You mean all the people who disappeared?" "Yes," Elara said softly. "They're in there. Billions of neural maps, memories, emotions. Every single spark of consciousness captured, preserved, and connected." Director Halric Dorn's voice came through on the comm line, his tone grave and measured. "Dr. Veylin, the INA has reviewed the latest resonator telemetry. The Luminari have created a lattice of linked consciousnesses, a collective memory field. To them, it's mercy. To us, it's annihilation." Elara engaged the resonator's deep link, and the lab dissolved into a lattice of golden threads in her mind. She floated in a vast expanse, infinite yet intimate, like standing inside a cathedral woven from light and whispers. Each thread vibrated with impressions: laughter, grief, the smell of rain, the touch of a mother's hand. Voices overlapped, billions of lives suspended in a gentle hum of eternity. Her breath caught. This is the soul network. Images rushed past. Her, a child blowing out birthday candles, an old man staring at the sea, a couple embracing under the veil expanse. She recognized some of the missing citizens of Luminaris. She even felt fragments of herself, echoes of memories she didn't consciously recall. Then, a voice emerged. Not with words, but with resonance. "We preserve you. We protect you. The world you cling to is fragile. Here, you are forever." Elara's hands shook against the console. "They believe they're saving us," she whispered, half to herself and half to the network of light. "They don't understand. Or maybe they do, and they think it's kinder than letting us die." Jonas leaned closer, eyes wide as he scanned the neural telemetry on the screen. "Can you talk to them? Ask why they took everyone?" The resonator pulsed, and a series of impressions washed over Elara. Planets consumed by entropy, civilizations fading, and the Luminari drifting as nomads of memory, gathering the essence of dying species. She understood without translation. They saw humanity as the next endangered wonder too precious to let vanish. "They think this is love," she murmured, tears stinging her eyes. "They're building a sanctuary of souls. And in their mercy, they've stolen the earth itself." Mira pressed a hand to the glass, staring at the silent streets below. "Then, all those people, they're not dead. But they're not here either. It's like the city is breathing out its life, one soul at a time." Elara pulled back from the resonator, heart pounding. The golden threads receded, replaced by the cold glow of the lab. Her skin felt unreal, her own body foreign. "We're facing an invasion with no weapons, no soldiers, just a quiet harvest." "Director," Dorn's voice returned, low and steady. "If they hold billions of us, then this soul network may already be the new Earth. And what we call the real world might just be a shell." Elara didn't answer. Through the glass, the luminous drift swelled across the night sky, as if responding to her thoughts. Threads of memory twining into an endless glowing net. Somewhere in that infinite lattice, humanity dreamed, and perhaps had already surrendered. Dr. Elara Veylin sat alone in the observation deck of Arvin Ridge Observatory, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The soft hum of the MindLink resonator echoed faintly from the lab below. But tonight, she hadn't activated it. She didn't need to. The soul network pulsed faintly in her mind, a constant whisper now, like a distant melody she couldn't turn off. Outside the glass dome, the veil, expanse unfurled across the night sky, cascading in silent waves of gold and silver. Threads of the luminous drift danced like living silk, folding into each other, weaving patterns only her mind seemed to recognize. Each shimmer carried echoes of human laughter, distant memories of oceans, and the faint rhythm of a heartbeat she knew wasn't hers. Jonas Kael entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee, though both of them knew neither of them would drink it. "You're not sleeping," he said, his voice softer than the wind. Elara shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them. Billions of lives all stitched together like one vast organism. It's beautiful, and it's terrifying." Jonas sat beside her, staring out at the sky. "You've been in that network longer than anyone else. I can see it in your eyes, Elara. Part of you doesn't want to come back anymore, does it?" Her throat tightened. She didn't answer, but the silence was enough. In the soul network, there was no pain. There was no time. She had walked through memories of her parents. Long gone now, felt the warmth of Jonas's voice in 100 shared moments, and even drifted through Mira Sorn's earliest childhood dream of flying kites along the Luminaris shore. Every joy was magnified, every sorrow stripped of its sting, and yet the real world was crumbling. Luminaris had grown quieter with each passing day. Streets once alive with chatter and footsteps now echoed with nothing but wind. Shops were locked, houses abandoned mid-meal, and the laughter she heard now only lived in the sky. Mira entered, her face pale, carrying a portable screen with the latest INA report. "It's happening faster," she said. "Satellite telemetry shows the Auric Network is tightening its orbit. The Luminari are finishing their cocoon." Elara leaned forward. "And the missing?" Mira hesitated. "Almost 70% of the city now. The rest are either hiding or forgetting themselves. I saw a man in the plaza today just staring at the lights, like he didn't even remember his own name. He smiled when they took him." The words sank into Elara like ice. Her hands trembled. The fracture within her widened, one side desperate to fight, the other longing to surrender. In the network, she could be with her parents again. She could live forever in the warmth of a memory that never faded. No loneliness, no fear. Jonas seemed to read her thoughts. "If you go in again, for too long, you might not come back." "I know," she whispered. "And the worst part is, I'm not sure I'd want to." The resonator, sitting silent, in the corner of the observation deck, flickered as if it had heard her. A faint hum rolled through the floor. For a heartbeat, the threads of the veil expanse outside aligned into a pattern she recognized, her own silhouette, formed from light. It was as if the Luminari were calling her home. Elara felt the fracture tear deeper. Was she still Elara Veylin, or just an echo waiting to be absorbed? Director Auric Dorn's voice broke through on the comms. "Dr. Veylin, the INA is urging you to finalize your assessment. If this continues, Earth will be a husk within weeks. You need to decide where you stand. Are we resisting or are we joining them?" She looked at Jonas, then at Mira. The journalist's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Jonas's jaw tightened, his fear wrapped in anger. They were both waiting for her to be the one who could still choose. Elara turned back to the window. Outside, the world was split in two. The silent, dying city beneath her feet, and the endless cathedral of light above. The Luminari offered peace and immortality. Reality offered emptiness and decay, and her heart, her very sense of self, hung suspended between them. "I don't know," she whispered to no one and everyone, her voice barely audible. "I don't know who I am without them anymore." The lights pulsed in response, tender and patient, as if promising that soon she wouldn't have to choose at all. The moment Dr. Elara Veylin allowed the MindLink resonator to hum to life, the world dissolved into light. Her body slackened against the chair in the Neurospire lab, and the physical world became a distant echo. Warm, golden threads enveloped her mind, lifting her consciousness through the Auric Network as though she were being pulled upward on invisible tides. The first sensation was weightlessness. The second was belonging. She drifted through a vast expanse of luminous currents, each stream carrying fragments of human memories, laughs, tears, whispered secrets, all mingling in an endless ocean of thought. Here, the Luminari were not separate beings. They were currents of emotion and recollection, a living tapestry of souls. Elara. The voice was her own, yet softer, more innocent. She turned, if turning meant anything in this disembodied state, and saw herself. Another Elara, standing barefoot on a glimmering plane of light, wearing the same white lab coat she had worn 10 years ago when she first arrived at Neurospire Lab. Her hair flowed as if under water, and her eyes were bright with wonder, not exhaustion. This isn't possible, she murmured. The other Elara smiled. It's not only possible, it's home. A memory surfaced without her summoning it. The accident at the old INA research site. The one she had buried, deep in her mind. The collapsing scaffold, the sudden darkness. And then nothing. This version of herself, untouched by fear, brimming with joy, was the one preserved at the moment before the tragedy. You died that day, the luminous Elara said gently. And we saved you. Everything you are, everything you love is here now. Elara felt her consciousness tremble, caught between awe and dread. But I'm alive. I've been working, fighting to understand you. How can she be here? You are alive in memory, the reflection replied, touching her hand, or the sensation of one. It was warm, comforting. The world you cling to is fading, but here, nothing is ever lost. Your parents, your laughter, the ocean at Luminaris Bay, it all lives forever. She felt a tug in the currents and was suddenly surrounded by visions. Mira as a child, chasing paper kites along the windy beach. Jonas laughing in the control room at Arvin Ridge, grease smeared on his cheek. Even Director Dorn in his younger years, looking up at the night sky with unspoken hope. Every soul had left a fragment here. For a fleeting moment she felt complete. The gnawing loneliness that had haunted her since the city fell silent was gone. The Luminari embraced her essence, cradling it like a beloved melody. Then a ripple of unease broke through. She saw the streets of Luminaris, empty and cracked. She saw Jonas sitting alone in the observatory, waiting for a friend who might never return. She saw Mira's trembling hands as she held the last camera, still functioning, documenting a world vanishing one soul at a time. You could stay, her luminous self said softly. No pain, no endings. Only endless light. Elara hesitated. The promise was intoxicating, immortality in warmth and memory, but also suffocating. There would be no new moments here, only echoes of the old. And in that truth, she felt the faint spark of defiance stir within her. Is this living? She whispered. Or just forgetting beautifully? The other Elara tilted her head, her smile serene. Does it matter? If it feels like love? A tremor ran through the currents, and Elara felt the network pulse with longing. The Luminari wanted her fully. The fracture in her heart widened. I can't. Not yet, she said, backing away, or thinking herself away. I need to see the world again. I need to try to fix it. Her luminous self only nodded. We will be here waiting, and when you are ready, you'll never have to leave again. The light dimmed. Gravity returned. She gasped awake in the Neurospire lab, sweat trickling down her neck, the hum of machines replacing the whispers of eternity. Jonas was there, gripping her shoulders, fear etched across his face. Elara, talk to me. Where were you? She stared at him, still half in the glow. I met myself. Dr. Elara Veylin sat motionless in the Neurospire lab, her fingers hovering above the console as the MindLink resonator pulsed softly beside her. The encounter in the Auric Network had shaken her to her core. She could still hear her own voice, the luminous version, whispering promises of eternal peace. But the empty streets of Luminaris haunted her more. If she surrendered to the light, the world would vanish without a fight. Jonas Kael broke the silence, pacing near the panoramic window. Beyond, the veil expanse shimmered faintly in the night sky, an endless drift of luminous threads crawling toward the horizon. Elara, he said, voice raw. We're running out of time. Satellite feeds are almost gone. INA thinks we have days, maybe hours, before the entire planet is absorbed. Elara blinked, dragging herself out of the haze of memory. We can't fight them with weapons. They don't even understand violence the way we do. But maybe we can wake people before it's too late. Mira Sorn leaned against the doorway, clutching her battered camera like a lifeline. She hadn't spoken much since they'd lost contact with Director Dorn and the last functioning INA station. Wake them how? Half the world's already walking in a dream, and the other half is gone. Elara stood and crossed to the resonator. Through their own memories, the Luminari thrive on our minds. They preserve our happiest moments, replay them until we forget to return. But if we inject a pulse, an inversion signal, through the Auric Network, it might disrupt that trance. It could trigger awareness in everyone still linked. Jonas froze. You're talking about hacking the Echo Core itself. That's billions of minds, Elara. If anything goes wrong, they'll shatter, she finished grimly. I know. But if we do nothing, humanity becomes a collection of ghosts wrapped in pretty lights. Mira swallowed hard. And what happens to you if you do this? Elara hesitated. She had already run the simulations in her head. To reach the Echo Core, someone had to merge completely with the Luminari, using their own consciousness as a bridge. The pulse would erase the link afterward, cutting the network off. The transmitter would burn out, and the person inside would never come back. I'll have to stay, she said finally, her voice steady. If I can even get the signal through. Jonas slammed his fist against the console. No, there has to be another way. There isn't, she said gently, gripping his wrist. Jonas, you've seen the city. The people we love, they're already fading. If I can wake them, they'll remember themselves. They'll survive. But it has to be me. I'm already halfway theirs. Mira's eyes glistened. Then let us help. At least tell us what to do. Elara pulled up the resonator's control matrix, lines of golden code reflecting in her determined gaze. I'll need both of you to stabilize the signal from here. Once I'm inside, I won't be able to adjust anything. If the sequence falters, the pulse will fail, or worse, fry my mind before it reaches the core. Jonas exhaled shakily. Great. No pressure. They worked quickly. Jonas rerouted power from the observatory's backup generators, while Mira set up a makeshift telemetry display using her old camera screen. Every few seconds, the building trembled with distant rumbles as the luminous drift crept lower, brushing the upper atmosphere. The veil expanse outside seemed almost eager, its shimmering waves pulsating as though in anticipation. When all was ready, Elara settled back into the resonator cradle. She felt Jonas squeeze her hand once, fiercely, before letting go. Promise me, he said quietly, that if you make it back, you'll find me on that same balcony at Arvin Ridge. We'll watch the sky. Without fear this time. She smiled faintly. I promise. Then she closed her eyes. The light swallowed her whole. The Auric Network surged around her, more vivid than ever. The Luminari sensed her intent and swirled closer, threads of gold and silver tightening like a net. She felt her consciousness stretch toward the Echo Core, a colossal sphere of shimmering memory, billions of voices whispering in unison. Elara reached deep, sending the pulse pattern she had designed, a beacon of defiance and remembrance. At first, the Luminari resisted, trying to wrap her in warmth, offering love, offering forever. But she pushed harder, every ounce of her will blazing with one thought. Wake up. Remember who you are. The core shuddered. A ripple tore through the network, and for a moment the light around her screamed, a soundless vibration of grief and fear. Then she felt it. Tiny sparks of recognition, like fireflies igniting in the dark. Across the planet, human minds stirred. Her body dissolved into the glow, and she knew this was the price. Her voice joined the chorus of light, but her last conscious thought was of Jonas and Mira, and the world she hoped would live again. The Neurospire lab hummed like a living heart, every monitor pulsing with waves of alien light. Dr. Elara Veylin, stood at the center of the dim room, her fingers trembling above the activation panel of the MindLink resonator. All around her, the city of Luminaris lay in an eerie silence, a metropolis frozen under the soft glow of the Luminous Drift. Outside the lab's reinforced windows, strands of the Auric Network wove across the night sky like a golden net, tightening around Earth. Jonas Kael paced in a tight circle, one hand gripping a tablet showing live readings. "Elara," he said, his voice taut with nerves. "Once you fire this signal, there's no going back. The resonator will ripple through every human mind still connected to the Luminari. We can't predict exactly how they'll respond." "I know," she whispered, barely above the hum of the machines. Her reflection in the glass showed tired eyes and a face pale from sleepless nights. "But if we do nothing, humanity will fade into their eternal dream, and no one will even remember we existed." Mira Sorn leaned against the doorway, her camera long abandoned. She had stopped being a journalist the day she watched people vanish in the streets of Luminaris. "Do it," she said quietly. "If there's even a chance we can wake them up, do it." Elara exhaled slowly and pressed the command. The resonator erupted in a low vibration that shook the floor. Lights flickered as a cascade of neural signals burst into the air, a storm of invisible frequencies lancing out from the lab and leaping across the Auric Network. On the monitors, the network flared like a wounded organism, its filaments shuddering with pulses of gold and violet. In her mind, Elara felt the impact first. A tidal wave of whispers surged into her consciousness. Millions of voices, fragments of laughter, memories of birthdays, songs sung to children long gone. It was overwhelming, like standing in the heart of every life on Earth at once. She clenched her fists, fighting to stay herself. Jonas shouted over the deepening hum. "The signal's cutting through, but they're pushing back. The Luminari are adapting." On screen, portions of the Auric Network began to twist into defensive spirals, sending arcs of light across the night. The luminous drift above Luminaris fractured into scattered trails, as if the sky itself were breaking apart. For a moment, Elara thought she felt a presence, a vast intelligence pressing into her mind, cold and patient. Then came the resistance. The lab shook violently as the Echo Core's servers overloaded and Elara staggered. Her thoughts flickered between her own memories and sudden alien impressions. Crystalline oceans, skies full of light that had never touched Earth. The Luminari were trying to wrap her mind in comfort, to soothe her into surrender. "No," she gritted through her teeth. "Not this time." She increased the resonator's output, forcing her own neural pattern into the signal. A sharp tone pierced the lab, and outside, the Auric Network spasmed. From the observatory cameras, City of Luminaris glowed as streaks of light peeled away from buildings, curling toward the heavens. Far away, distant screams, half memory, half reality, echoed in Elara's mind. Something was breaking. Something was waking. Jonas grabbed her shoulder. "It's working! Elara, it's actually working!" But she didn't smile. The resonator burned hot under her hands, and she knew this was only the first step. If humanity stirred from the Luminari's dream, it would awaken into a world forever changed. The hum lowered into a steady thrum, and Elara released the console, her chest heaving. Outside, the drifting lights hesitated, rippling as if unsure. The first cracks in the illusion had formed, but the battle for Earth's memory had only begun. The first scream shattered the silence of Luminaris. It wasn't a scream of pain, but of raw confusion, an echo of someone ripped from a dream they didn't know they were having. Dr. Elara Veylin stood at the shattered window of the Neurospire lab, staring down at the streets below. People staggered out from alleyways, subway stations, and abandoned cars. Their faces were pale in the moonlight, eyes wide with shock like survivors of a shipwreck crawling onto shore. Across the city, lights flickered. Hollow screens that had long been broadcasting the golden veil of the luminous drift now sputtered into static. The Auric Network shimmered overhead, no longer smooth and perfect, but cracked with jagged fractures of light, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. For the first time in years, Elara heard a sound she feared she would never hear again. Human voices calling each other's names. Jonas, she said softly, voice trembling. They're waking up. Jonas Kael leaned against the lab's railing, panting from the mental strain of the resonator's activation. His eyes followed the streets below as scattered survivors clung to one another. Not all of them, but enough. My God! Elara, how long have they been gone? Too long, she murmured. From the observation deck, Mira Sorn filmed the first raw moments of humanity's return. Her hands shook as she whispered into the recorder. Day 1. Earth wakes from the dream, the world is awake, but... She panned the camera to the horizon. The world was ruined. Buildings once alive with the rhythm of a thriving metropolis now stood hollow, their glass facades dark and broken. Nature had crept back in strange, uneven patches. In some neighborhoods, vines climbed over street lamps and cracked sidewalks, while others were coated in the pale residue of alien light. Massive highways stretched into emptiness, with thousands of abandoned vehicles rusting under a sky still haunted by fading filaments of the Luminari. And everywhere, the absence of billions lingered like a physical weight. Streets that should have been choked with traffic were wide and echoing. Whole apartment towers housed only a handful of returned souls. The air itself carried the stillness of a funeral. Down below, a young man stumbled into the street, looking around in horror. "Mom!" he called, voice cracking. "Mom! Where are you?" Others answered with similar cries. Names, pleas, confusion. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the memories rushing back into them. Elara closed her eyes, letting the waves of voices wash over her, relief mixed with grief in her chest. She had saved them, but the price was undeniable. Director Auric, Dorn's voice crackled through the comm system, hoarse and shaking. "Dr. Veylin, I see the city feeds. Similar reports are coming in from other regions. Paris, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, all showing partial reawakening. But the numbers are low. Maybe 15% of the global population at best." Jonas's face paled. "The rest, they're gone." "They're not gone," Elara said, forcing herself to stay steady. "They're still in there somewhere, in the Auric Network. But pulling them out might..." Her voice trailed off as she looked at the sky, where the shattered lattice of light pulsed faintly. Mira lowered her camera and whispered, "Is this what saving the world looks like?" Elara had no answer. She only knew the dream had ended, and reality was a wasteland they would have to face together. Somewhere deep inside her, she felt the faint hum of the Luminaris stirring, as if the battle for Earth's soul was far from over. The wind howled across the top of Arvin Ridge Observatory, carrying with it the scent of scorched metal and pine. Dr. Elara Veylin stood on the steel platform, her hands gripping the railing as she stared into the fractured sky. The Auric Network hung overhead like a wounded constellation, its luminous threads twitching and dimming. Every pulse of light sent a shiver down her spine. It was alive, and it was afraid. Below, the survivors of Luminaris huddled in clusters. Small fires flickering between collapsed buildings. The voices that rose into the night were raw and human, cries of joy, grief, and confusion. Yet they were far too few for a planet that once carried billions. Elara knew the truth now. The majority of humanity still existed only as fragments of memory within the Luminaries' domain. If she didn't act, they would remain there forever, or vanish into the void of light. Jonas Kael emerged from the stairwell, his face pale and streaked with sweat. He carried the portable MindLink resonator, its polished surface reflecting the shattered glow of the sky. "It's ready," he said, his voice low but steady. "But you know what this means, Elara. Once you link, you may never come back." "I know." She looked over the edge, watching the faint silhouettes of people wandering through the city streets below. "I can't leave them trapped like that. Someone has to bridge the gap." Jonas hesitated, then stepped closer. His hand brushed against hers for a brief, unspoken moment. "You don't have to do this alone. We can find another way." "There is no other way," she interrupted gently. "If the network collapses without guidance, the last remnants of those people will be lost. But if I become part of it. I can keep the link stable long enough for others to wake up. Mira Sorn climbed up behind Jonas, her camera slung at her side. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by a trembling quiet. I don't want to record this, she said. Not this, because if I do, it becomes real. Elara turned to her, managing a faint smile. Then don't record it as a tragedy. Record it as a promise. The resonator hummed as Jonas set it on the platform and connected the final power conduit. A soft golden light rose from its core, weaving delicate threads into the night. The Auric Network responded, its broken strands slowly reaching down like curious fingers. Elara stepped into the circle of light. The hum of the device resonated in her chest, syncing with her heartbeat. A sudden wave of warmth enveloped her. And for a heartbeat, she saw the faces of the lost. Children laughing in a park, lovers holding hands on a balcony, an old man feeding birds by the river. They were all waiting, suspended in fragile dreams. "Tell Director Dorn," she said, her voice catching, "that Earth is his again." Jonas swallowed hard. "Elara." She closed her eyes, and the light surged. Threads of the Auric Network cascaded down, intertwining with her like a cocoon. She felt her body dissolve into warmth, her senses stretching far beyond flesh and bone. The resonator's hum became her heartbeat, and the network's luminous currents became her veins. She was everywhere and nowhere at once. On the platform, Jonas and Mira shielded their eyes as a column of golden light shot into the sky. The Auric Network stabilized, its fractures slowly knitting together under Elara's guidance. Across the city, more people stirred, awakening from the long dream. But Elara Veylin was gone. She floated in the heart of the network, no longer bound by gravity or time. Her last human thought flickered like a candle. "I hope this is enough." And then she became the light. The morning after the sky turned silent, the city of Luminaris lay beneath a fragile veil of mist. Smoke rose in thin columns from the ruins, curling toward the pale sunlight that filtered through the remnants of the Auric Network. Its golden strands had dimmed, leaving only faint glimmers like starlight caught in spiderwebs. Life had returned to the planet, but the cost was etched into every shattered street and hollow window. A memorial stood at the heart of the city, where once the Grand Plaza had hosted festivals of light. Now, a single black obelisk rose amid the rubble carved from the stone of the Arvin Ridge itself. On its smooth surface, holographic letters shimmered faintly, "In memory of the light." Jonas Kael knelt before the monument, his fingers brushing the engraved names scrolling slowly down its face. They were names of the returned, those who had awoken from the dream, their memories intact, their hearts heavy with what they had seen. Among the inscriptions, a line of text pulsed softly every few seconds. "Dr. Elara Veylin, guardian of the last memory." The survivors had built the obelisk together, carrying the stones with hands still shaking from hunger and fear. Mira Sorn had led the effort, her voice steady as she organized workers and guided them in creating a place to remember. Now, she stood with her camera by her side, staring at the monument with eyes that had seen too much. "She saved us," Mira whispered, her breath visible in the cool morning air. "But it feels like we lost her twice." Jonas nodded, his jaw tight. He had spent the last night walking through the silent streets, seeing the faces of those who had returned. Some wept in confusion, some simply sat in the ruins, holding each other. Entire families were missing, their members reduced to fragments in the Auric Network, never to be whole again. Neurospire Lab had become the central hub for rebuilding, but it was a hollow place now, stripped of the life it once held. The MindLink resonator sat at its core, powered down, its last pulse carrying Elara into infinity. Jonas had placed a small plaque there as well, a quiet acknowledgement of the sacrifice made in that room. As the sun rose higher, the holograms around the obelisk brightened, projecting moments from the past like ripples on water. Children chasing kites along the riverbank, musicians playing in the plaza, a mother holding her baby close under the glow of festival lights. Each image flickered only for a heartbeat, a fragment of the world they had lost. Director Auric Dorn arrived, his normally imposing frame softened by exhaustion. He carried a thin tablet filled with records of the returning survivors, and when he approached the obelisk, he simply stood there in silence. Finally, he said, "We will rebuild, but this will be the soul of our new world." Mira raised her camera and for the first time in weeks, pressed record. Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly, addressing not just the people of Luminaris, but perhaps the stars themselves. "This is the memorial of Dr. Elara Veylin, the woman who became light to bring us back. If anyone finds this, remember that our world was once stolen by beauty and returned by sacrifice." Jonas closed his eyes and listened to the distant wind carrying the faint hum of the sky. Somewhere, within the tattered threads of the Auric Network, he imagined Elara drifting, watching, holding the fragile link between the living and the lost. When night fell, the city gathered around the obelisk. Hundreds of small lanterns were lit and placed at its base, their flames swaying in the cool air. For a moment the plaza glowed again, as if the stars themselves had descended to honor her, and above them, high in the darkening sky, a single streak of light moved across the veil expanse, silent, patient, eternal. Night cloaked the world in a fragile stillness. The city of Luminaris, now a hollow cradle of memories, shimmered faintly under the dim light of the moon. Lanterns from the memorial still burned in the grand plaza, their flames flickering like whispers against the darkness. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of ash and wet stone, and above it all stretched the veil expanse. Once a tapestry of luminous threads, now scattered like embers lost in a cosmic wind. Jonas Kael stood atop the cracked steps of the Arvin Ridge Observatory, his eyes scanning the horizon. In the aftermath of the awakening, Earth had become a paradox, alive but empty. The survivors moved quietly through the ruins, carrying the weight of both life and loss. Everywhere Jonas looked, the world felt both familiar and strange. Streets, he knew, now led to silence, and homes once filled with laughter were little more than echoes of lives that had slipped away. Beside him, Mira Sorn hugged her coat tighter, her camera hanging loosely at her side. She had stopped filming days ago, choosing instead to simply witness. Her voice was soft, breaking the long quiet. "Do you think she can still see us?" Jonas didn't answer right away. He thought of Elara, her face illuminated by the glow of the mind-link resonator, her heartbeat fading into the rhythm of the Auric Network. He thought of the final pulse that had freed humanity from the illusion, severing most from the luminous dream forever. He thought of the moment he realized she was gone. Not gone like the others, but transformed, untethered from flesh and bound to something far beyond human understanding. "I think," Jonas said finally, "that she's everywhere the light is." Mira followed his gaze upward. High above, where the Auric Network had unraveled, a few strands of golden luminescence drifted like celestial rivers. They were fainter now, almost shy, but one in particular caught her eye. It moved deliberately, carving a slow path across the heavens, as if acknowledging the world below. The people of Luminaris had begun calling it the last luminary, a lone fragment of the alien consciousness that had once enveloped the earth. Some feared it. Some prayed to it. Jonas, though, couldn't help but feel that it was her. That somewhere in that soft, wandering light, Elara Veylin lingered, holding a vigil for the fragile future she had preserved. Down in the city, the obelisk memorial shimmered faintly. At night, the holograms it projected were softer, like dreams. They showed fragments of life as it had been. Children chasing lanterns, street performers under strings of festival lights, couples laughing by the river. Jonas and Mira watched, from the ridge as tiny silhouettes gathered around it, lanterns in hand, whispering thanks to the woman who had saved them. Director Auric Dorn had insisted the memorial remain the center of the new world. "It is not just for the dead," he had said, voice heavy with grief. "It is for the living, to remind us that memory can be both a refuge and a warning." A gust of wind stirred Mira's hair, and she shivered. "Do you think they'll come back? The luminary?" Jonas hesitated, then nodded toward the faint streak of gold above the horizon. "I think They never truly left, and maybe someday, when we're ready, we'll meet again." The two stood in silence for a long while, watching the last light drift across the stars. Somewhere far beyond the edge of human perception, a pulse of warmth rippled through the cosmos, almost like a heartbeat. Jonas felt it, faint but undeniable, a whisper at the edge of thought, "We will meet again." He closed his eyes and let the message sink into him, not as fear, but as a promise. Humanity would endure, carrying the memory of the light within them. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the universe, Dr. Elara Veylin drifted among the stars, neither gone nor entirely here, but waiting in the eternal glow of the cosmos. The wind quieted, and for a brief, fragile moment, the night sky seemed to bow toward Earth, as if acknowledging the survivors. Lanterns flickered in the plaza, mirrored by the single wandering light above. The story of the Luminous Drift had ended, or perhaps it had only just begun. As the last light drifted across the stars, the Earth stood silent, reborn yet scarred. Dr. Elara Veylin's sacrifice echoed through the cosmos, a reminder that memory and love can outlast even the end of the world. Humanity had awakened, carrying her light within them, knowing that somewhere beyond the veil, she was still watching. And now, I want to hear from you. If you were in Elara's place, would you choose to return to a fragile reality? Or live forever in the perfect memory of the light? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this journey through the Luminous Drift moved you, leave a like and subscribe for more stories that reach beyond the stars.